we're using here.
All right, so
You should be good.
wait a second. So you're telling me that there's people on the internet that complain about things?
Oh my gosh, there are.
It just blows my mind, right? Hey everybody, Frank Peterson, frankpetersonbroker.com. Hope you're all doing really well today. We got another episode and we have a guest on here today, Mr. Matt Matheny with Loan Depot. If you like this episode, I appreciate it if you do the thumbs up and like this episode. Share it with people who think that might be interested in it. And if you have something to say, if you have any tips or suggestions on how to improve, leave a comment. And if you're new, please hit that subscribe button and hit that little bell. Make sure you get notifications on the show. So let's jump right into it. We've got Mr. Matt Matheny. I'm going to bring you up on the screen here. How are we doing today?
Doing good. Hi, Pete. How you doing today?
Doing great. So everybody, Matt Matheny is a senior loan officer over at Loan Depot, and he's local to the Schaumburg and the greater area in Illinois. And I actually know Matt. We've known each other for a long, long time. When I first got out of school, one of my first jobs was I was in lending at a company out in Schaumburg, and we worked together for a couple of years out there. And we got to kind of goof around and have a lot of fun. And there was some stress and some fun, and work hard, play hard. So me and Matt go way back. So why don't you just give yourself a brief introduction, kind of let everybody know who you are and some of your highlights and your experience and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, first things first. Let me thank you, Frank, for having me on your show here. It's always a great pleasure to not only help you out, but spread the word about what I'm passionate about. I think the biggest thing that I could portray here in the beginning is that there's two main things that I'm passionate about that pretty much bleed into everything else that I do. One of those is education. So, educating my customers and even the realtor people that I work with, all the partners that I have out there, so they just have a good idea of what I do and how I do it is really the number one thing. Secondary only to that is communication. The communication that you portray to other people is really the earmark of your quality. The better you communicate, the more likely it is that things are going to go smoothly. So ultimately, those are the things that I focus on up front, at least. And that'll, like I said, bleed into everything when it comes to the mortgage industry. It is very complicated, as many people may already know. But when you're working with the right person, somebody who knows the system well, it doesn't have to be complicated for the consumer. I like to take that responsibility on myself.
Yeah, right. Talking about mortgages, I mean, there's a lot of information. A lot of people can just get really overwhelmed. I mean, you've got like deeds and titles and promissory notes and mortgages and all these different terms being thrown around. It's like, how do you keep it all straight? And it can be really daunting for a lot of people, right?
Well, I think the easiest thing is just to using terminology that makes sense to people. Obviously there's certain terms that you just can't get around, like you said, like promissory notes and stuff like that. But just assuming that people understand what those things are is usually the fallback that kind of destroys the relationship between a consumer and a professional. If somebody can't relate to you based off of something that you will understand, as opposed to using a lot of industry terms, that makes it a lot easier. So I try my best to make sure that I kind of play the player, so to say. I understand who my customer is, so that way when I'm communicating with them, I communicate on a level in which I know that they're going to understand. So it makes it a lot easier when you do that.
So you play to the player. It's like, well, from one player to another, right?
Not quite. I love playing games with my son, and I always know when we're playing a game where he's going to choose one of the cards that are in front of him. I always make sure I put the funniest card down because it doesn't matter whether it makes sense or not. If it's funny, he's going to choose it. That's what I mean by playing the play.
I know. I'm just kidding around. That's funny. So, yeah, I mean, mortgages is such a huge, broad topic. You kind of want to just go through the basics of it, just so we have a foundation that people can follow us with, and then we can probably break into some more specifics a little bit later. You think that sounds like a plan?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, the most common use for mortgages right now is being more prevalent right now is purchases. So right now we're in a very heavy purchase market. Most people are looking to buy houses. Over the last 6 or so years, everybody's been riding this wave of refinances where you have a low rate market where interest rates are low, and the only hindrance to that is when you have low rates, you have low values in a lot of cases. So, all the people that were going to ride that wave have pretty much rode it at this point. So now really the major focus is how do we start getting rid of the stock of homes that we have now that in a lot of cases we've got all these homes and we just don't have any buyers. And that's part of the education piece, because there's so many products out there that, most people don't even realize exist. I mean, the fact is your average loan officer is going to come in and say, hey, are you, somebody who needs a 30-year payment because you need to keep that payment as low as possible? Or are you super financially stable, putting 50% down and can handle a 15-year loan? They don't talk about anything else besides these standard fixed rate products. And people just don't realize what opportunities are out there and what type of products that they would have that are going to allow them to get in a home much faster than just, considering the standard options themselves.
Well, let's talk about some of those. So you're saying that a lot of people are not aware that there's a vast amount of these products out there. How about there's dozens of them, right? So, so yeah, they're probably only familiar with, okay, well, I can choose FHA or I can choose conventional. And with FHA, I have to bring 3.5% down minimum, and conventional I have to bring 5%. But there's a lot of programs for first-time home buyers and all this other stuff that goes around too. Do you just want to kind of touch on some of these things? What are some of the programs that you think are the most beneficial that a lot of people don't know about? Let's hear about it.
I think first things first, let's start with the first-time home buyer since you mentioned it. I do first-time home buyer seminars quite often throughout the year. Again, like I said, that's part of the education piece. So I actually have a full manual on first-time home buyers on how they can literally go from getting pre-approved all the way to turning the key in that doorknob after the closing. So maybe later on we can share that and people can take advantage of that information straight up. When it comes to first-time home buyer programs, they're not just limited to getting a tax rebate or maybe just getting a loan, whereas other people otherwise you might not be able to. But these programs are pretty standard in the sense that you can still do 5% down, you can do the 3.5% like you talked on FHA, but there's programs like IDA, which is the Illinois Housing Department.
Yeah.
Basically, what they offer loans that are more or less like a community lending. So it's like saying, hey, you're going to get your own mortgage and everything, but we're going to give you this tiny little mortgage, that maybe helps with 3 to 5% of the purchase of your property, which enables people to get money for down payment. And a lot of times that's kind of the sticking point is a lot of people, they could afford to buy a home monthly, they've got the credit to do it, but they can't muster the down payment for whatever reason that be. The IDA programs are great for usefulness in those circumstances where the down payment is something that they're struggling with, but they have all of the other pieces of the puzzle in play. And you never know why somebody might need to buy a home. If you're having a baby or you already have one and you're having a second one and you need to quickly move into something that's going to improve your family's lifestyle or the condition in which they live in, you may not have time to sit around and save up $7,000, $10,000, $15,000 to get what you want. So the fact is sometimes people have to utilize these specialty first-time homebuyer programs to get the foot in the door and then go on from there. Are there other programs that might be more favorable when it comes to rate or other factors? Sure, but that's not really what that program is designed around. Sometimes you have to use one thing to get your foot in the door, and then you convert that to something else later on down the road that's a lot more advantageous for your family. All right. Mm-hmm. So again, that's an example of something that a first-time home buyer might use. There's other ways to get around this down payment issue. One of my favorite down payment option loans is going to be the USDA loan. Now, USDA is not really allowed everywhere. It's not going to be found in downtown Chicago or even downtown Rockford or some of the smaller, major cities in the area. These are going to be working with lower income, semi-rural, on the outskirts of town. I live in a little town called Genoa. We call it Genowhere because it's surrounded by
nowhere.
nothing but nowhere, exactly. But
Where are you?
the fact
You
is,
nowhere.
yeah, my entire community is eligible for this loan product. But when I go to the local banks in the area and say, hey, how many of these USDA loans do you do? And the answer is almost always zero, which
Yeah.
I don't understand because it's a 0% down payment option. Nobody's giving them extra money as part of a separate loan. There's no community lending. It's literally just 100% financing. And although 100% financing was part of what got us in trouble, back in the day, it was certainly not the only factor. And just like, those crazy interest-only option ARMs, those had a place in the market. They would have been great for investors that want to buy and flip a property nice and quick. What we can't do is sell that type of loan to, 79-year-old grandma that, makes $1,000 in Social Security each month. Her income's not going to jump up high enough to take care of those extra payments and that extra high interest rate later on down the road. What I'm talking about here is I'm talking about safe lending, talking about performing the job function that allows me to guarantee, not with all certainty, but to at least guarantee with some certainty that there is their ability to repay. And I think that that's really, as a loan officer, what you need to focus on is the ability to repay. And like I said, that's what I call responsible lending in general.
Absolutely. I think that's something that we definitely need a lot more of. And I just look at the cause of the recession was from the banking and the lending getting a little loosey-goosey back in the day. And it was more about just turning these files and getting these loans done. It was more about that than, is this right for my client, right? Is this right for the homeowner? And that seemed to have gotten lost in translation or put by the wayside, where really that should be really, first and foremost, and that absolutely should be the most important thing is, is this the best product for this person? And, when you have all these options to choose from, you really want to make sure that they can be informed and they can be confident in their decision to be able to move forward. So that's why I really like your style that, you think, education first and then fulfilling the needs second. I think that's really important, that people need to be, informed and comfortable to make it's a big decision, right? I mean, we're talking about a house. You're not buying a pack of gum, this is, a couple $100,000, that we're talking about here. So it's kind of a big deal. So you want to make sure that you can be comfortable to make that kind of decision. Absolutely. So what do you think that you do? Go ahead.
I think you hit the nail right on the head. I mean, it was about money, and it wasn't just the bankers and the lenders that had the money symbols. They see the money and they say, okay, well, this is an easy way for me to grab some cash. But at the same time, the consumers themselves are looking at it saying, hey, this is an easy way for me to grab the house of my dreams, not thinking about whether they could really afford it in the long run. Yeah. So I think it's the eyes too big for your stomach type scenario for a lot of consumers, and then just simply greed for those loan professionals that, were, again, riding the wave and trying to find a way to just make as much money as they could. It wasn't about relationship building, like kind of what I'm trying to build. It was more about just making the quick cash and moving on. I call that transactional. And that's what we want to get away from. We don't want, as lenders, we don't want to be transactional anymore, where it's a one and done. We want to build a relationship. I mean, half of my borrowers that I work with, at least the ones that have Facebook, are my Facebook friends. Mm-hmm. They like my page. They make comments on my other closings when I share congratulations to them. So, building that relationship takes honesty, and it obviously takes the education, like you said. So, yeah, I mean, those two things by themselves will naturally build a business. And I think that's where I'm at right now is, finding more ways to naturally build my business while I'm still servicing at a high quality for the customers that I already have a contact with.
Yeah, right. Isn't it crazy? I apply the same thing to my my real estate activities. It's like really all you have to do is just be, an ethical person and just have a good moral standard and then be competent. Like do what you say you're going to do and don't be out to screw anybody and you're going to be doing great. That kind of seems to be the secret sauce is just, be fair and do your job and show up.
Oh, that's a secret. I have no idea, but somehow you're right. It is a secret.
It's crazy.
Honestly, who'd have thought?
Yeah. I know, right? Well, I'm sure that there's a lot of people watching that, they've never bought a house before. They really don't even know where to begin. We talked about first-time home buyers and stuff like that. Like, well, the first step is to get pre-qualified, right? You want to get into
Yeah,
that?
so I'll take this opportunity to mention a couple of different types of products and how you deal with these. First things first, the whole point of it is to just talk to a loan professional, because when you take advice from people that aren't necessarily in the field, there's a lot of misconceptions that can be taken into account. Like, some people say, well, I'll never work with FHA. FHA is a pain and I'll never want to do a loan with them. But when in fact, FHA, the only real caveat to FHA is that they work with lower income borrowers that may have high debt ratios, and they work with people that have lower credit scores that may just have some struggles, or they're growing financially. So, there's a lot of different reasons in which you might use one type of loan product over another, but taking the advice of the professional that you've decided to work with is really key in that. And so my initial steps is I always have people hit my online application up. So I usually send out a link to it. They sign on to my online application. They fill out the entire application on their cell phone, on a tablet, computer. I mean, the tech, is really super savvy here at Loan Depot. So we make it extremely easy for people to not only fill out the application, but then deal with their paperwork as well. The application that we use online, not only is it easy to use, but it goes an extra few steps for you. The fact is it will, if you depending on, where you work or where you bank at, about 55 to 60% of people that use this online application are going to be able to automatically verify their income and assets, which means they don't need to produce bank statements and pay stubs and W-2s and things like that, because we just go out and get that information directly from the sources. So that way, not only do they not have to provide it, but when it comes to underwriting, we don't even need to look at it. The computer can read all these things and understand what they are, and it literally will make that decision for you. I mean, it allows me to take an application that I get from somebody and spit out a pre-approval for them within maybe 15 minutes. And to be able to do that in this atmosphere is what will set you apart as a loan officer, because most of my contacts are real estate agents. They don't have time to sit around for 2, 3, 4 days while I decide whether I have enough time to work out an application with somebody. The fact is they're in the same boat all of us are in, where it's here, it's now, it's strike while the iron's hot, and that's really what it boils down to. So being able to do those things quickly and easily is very key in this, and I think that, that online application form, you're going to start to see just about any bank, or every bank, do this. There's a lot of them already out there, some of them better than others. I won't mention names, but there's some that advertise heavily that aren't quite what they say they are. So keep that in mind, is that, the application itself, the online stuff, it's not to eliminate a loan officer or to get rid of the professional or the professionalism in our atmosphere. It's more about making my job faster and easier for me to do, so I can spend more time helping more customers and doing the product knowledge, like explaining what's good about using IDA or why to use USDA versus IDA if, let's say, you can get around a down payment. Or maybe there's, like, for example, I'm licensed in Texas and Florida. Texas and Florida have their own first-time home buyer and grants and different things that they do.
Yep.
So, knowing that you have somebody in your corner that can direct you in the right way straight off the bat with that application process is probably the biggest thing that most people should be looking for in a loan officer, not just, well, who's got the lowest rate. And the fact is I can compete all day, but there'll always be somebody out there somewhere that'll want to, short me by an eighth or cut me by $100 or $200 in closing costs to try to steal the deal. What I always tell people is, sometimes you pay for what you get. Let me know if you've ever bought fly-by-night home auto insurance and you get into an accident and find out that you don't have as much coverage as you thought you had. So there's a lot of different reasons why you would want a professional in your corner, even though it may feel like it's a simple one-time transaction and then it's done. The fact is that 15 or 30 or 45 days that you spend trying to get your mortgage done can be very stressful if you're working with somebody that just doesn't know what they're doing or points you down the wrong path. And if somebody gives you the wrong loan, well, guess what? you're dealing with that for quite some time. It's not like you're moving
Yeah.
next year, you know. This is something you're going to have to live with for a while.
Yeah, it's going to affect you for years and years and years and potentially tens of thousands of dollars. So absolutely. So you don't
Exactly.
think, well, before we, well, I always thought it was really interesting about your, when you're talking about like this new online application process where they can just tie right into your bank accounts and into your work and stuff like that. That just blows my mind. I remember, well, I was working with you in like 2012, 2013, and I remember we had to be, just constantly following up with people and having them turn in their last 2 years of like W-2s and tax returns and their bank statements and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, well, this last page was left blank intentionally. It's like, why do they even bother to leave the page blank intentionally? You're just burning paper, you're killing trees. And then, people are like, oh, well, I didn't think that you needed that. So it's just like all this nonsense back and forth. And it takes like days and all the frustration of just getting all that paperwork in order to make a complete file. And so if you're telling me that you can just like skip 60% of that and then the underwriters don't even have to bother to look at it, that's
Oh yeah,
that's
it's
a
a big
thumbs up
deal.
in my book.
No, I agree, and I think the bigger point too is being able to skip over it in underwriting. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of people out there that are super tech savvy, and they'd have no problem sending me 100, pay statements and 3 years worth of bank statements if they needed to. There's a lot of people out there that could safely and easily do that, but we are still living in an age in which there's a crossover. Like my kids know how to use computers and phones way better than I did when I was their age because they didn't exist.
Yeah.
But on top of that, we have a whole older generation of people that are in all kinds of different age ranges, and a lot of them just don't understand the technology and know how it works on trying to send me a pay stub. And, it's like, well, I took a picture of it with my phone, but my phone's, a flip phone, and, it's got 1 pixel, when they're trying to take a picture and send me something, and then you have to redo things. And like you said, it just becomes a mess. This takes all the guesswork out of it. So day one certainty is what we call that program. So if you look it up, you can go to Google and just Google search day one certainty, and there will be a number of different videos straight from the Loan Depot cafe, Knowledge Cafe, and there's all kinds of information that you can find there that talks about specialty type, not necessarily products that we offer for mortgages, but just special programs and different tactics that we use in marketing and application centers and just gathering of information that is pretty unique to us. Although it's not 100% unique, we definitely are at the forefront of these technologies and how do we utilize them.
Mm-hmm. So with all this technology and all this automation, you feel confident that they're just not going to make that switch, and you don't think that you're going to get Amazoned? You think that you're going to have a desk and be doing work 5 years, 10 years from now? You think there's still going to be a need for loan officers? Or you think it's just all going to be computers and algorithms?
I think that there will always be a need for a human interaction in this field. They've tried to take that out of the car buying business. You see these companies that sell cars out of these big Rolodex box things and stuff like that. And,
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong. I mean, that's, a car is a big step in a lot of people's lives. But the fact is that you'll probably own upwards of 10 or so vehicles in your lifetime, depending on how hard you are on your cars. But you're going to own a lot more of those than you would ever own homes for the average person.
Yeah.
And when it comes to home lending, it's not like there's a whole lot of different options on car buying. I mean, you buy a car for a price, you got a trade-in, you got financing. Those are really your factors there. Financing is pretty simple. It's how long and how much rate-wise. But when it comes to lending, not only do you have how long and how much, but you have structure. You have rate buy-downs. You have things like the doctor's loan programs where people that have a whole bunch of student loans because they went out and did what they thought was the right thing at the time, got this education, they've got all these student loans, struggling to pay it back because they haven't met their employment expectations yet. but yet we come up with a program that allows people to use a buy down process to have a much lower payment for the first 2 or 3 years that they own this home. So that way they don't have to buy the starter home, wait 3 to 5 years, sell it, and then buy the house that they want. Now we say, hey, you know what, don't have to wait for all that stuff. Let's give you something comfortable now for the next 2 or 3 years, and then as your income grows, that interest rate will adjust to where it should be, and then now you're in a normal loan, but you're not doing this thing all over again, okay? Mm-hmm. So that's just an example of trying to come up with unique ways to where we can help people find ways to finance. And stuff like that's not just going to come from a program. Being able to explain that to somebody is not going to be easy on a computer screen. So, and then just the whole fact that although computers have the ability to, manipulate your words that you say and understand it in some reasonable sense, they don't get emotion. They don't understand when I'm sitting there talking to somebody and I mention FHA and they cringe. That lets me know that they don't understand FHA and that it's not necessarily a bad product, but maybe there's just something that they don't get about it. And you'll never replace that with a computer.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when I first started out in lending and we learned about like the whole sales process and all that. They what was called like 3 deep, right? It's like this is what you want to do, this is why you want to do it, and this is what it's going to allow you to do. And when I first started, I had a little bit of pushback. I was like, "Who cares? Why? Why do we have to do all this?" And then as I continued with the experience, I quickly learned it's like, "Oh wow, this is actually a very important thing." Because then you're asking these open-ended questions. You're beginning to understand more about this person and what their goals are, and what really a more dynamic, well-rounded idea of kind of who they are and what they're trying to do. And then you might be able to come up with creative solutions that they never even thought of, just because you had these, you took the time and you have the human aspect of it. You had these types of conversations with people that you really open up a lot of doors, and then you use that as an opportunity to educate and then make sure that they are the best product, because there are a lot of them available. So absolutely, I would have to 100% agree with you that yeah, there's a human aspect to this for both of us. That it just can't be replicated with an algorithm,
Yeah, they go back to what you were talking about with the 3 deep. That takes me back to the Royal days. But yeah, I mean it's very true in the sense, especially on the refinance side, is that most people don't understand a lot of times what they actually need. A lot of people have wants, but they don't realize sometimes that looking at the long term and how those wants will affect their finances and then their needs come into play after the fact, and I always urge people to look at what they need first and then look at what their wants after that, because ultimately you can't get what you want without having what you need. And yep. That is a pretty simple way of looking at it. And, and people sometimes need direction, and that's what we're here for as a financial type consultant, is that you're expected to be an expert. And if you're not, you're going to struggle.
And you're doing a disservice to your clients.
Well, that's why you did well when you did what you did, because you understood the idea behind understanding what they want and then finding a way to find a bunch of other stuff to make that worth it. You know what I mean? Because somebody might just want $10,000 worth of cash. But if I told somebody that, hey, not only can I get you $10,000 worth of cash, but I can restructure your finances to pay your house off 15 years faster, which will ultimately save you $30,000. So let me ask you, would you rather have $10,000 cash, or would you rather have $20,000 savings? I mean, when you average the 30 and the 10 together, that's where I'm coming up with that math. But it's simple in that sense, but people don't look at it that way.
Yep. I've applied that same process to all of my other sales experience moving forward as well. So it's a really, really fascinating concept. It's not just, just the surface is just, scratching on the surface, but really kind of getting to that third level of understanding is just so important for this consultative sales that we do. And you can really open a lot of doors, and you can give people a lot of aha moments, and you can have a full understanding of what their picture is, and you just be that much more prepared in order to help them to make the best decision. You need to have those tough conversations, and you need to ask the tough questions in order to get that understanding. And sometimes it can be a struggle, but I think if people can be open-minded and understand where you're coming from and why you're trying to do it, that you're not just wasting their time, that you're trying to learn so that you can, be of more value to them,
I, I remember when I went to go buy my first car, and my dad was talking to me about it, and he was saying, look, he's like, the first rule of sitting down with a salesman is don't let him relate to you. Don't let him be your friend. Don't let him understand. No, don't let him in your brain. And I took what he said to heart. And that was how I managed my business transactions going forward from there. It wasn't until I became a salesman that I realized that is the heart and soul of what makes a good salesman a good salesman. Okay, and the other factor, not only in that, is to have someone's best interest at heart. Some salesmen let them in and they get you because they don't have your best interest at heart. They're just finding a tool that they can use to fit you into what they want to fit you into, versus somebody who has a true intent to make sure that your financial future and that your overall future is better as a result by working with you. That is the key. And if you can do that for a customer, they're going to realize it later on down the road that you did that for them, and that's where the business takes off, because that's when people are sending, you got to talk to this guy Matt, or you've got to talk to this guy Frank. He knows what he's doing. He put me in the best position he could have, and that's where referrals come from. And that's the goal. That's the mining that you're supposed to do.
Yeah, you just nailed it right on the head. I remember we were talking a while back. We had lunch about a couple months ago or so, and you had mentioned like VA and some VA programs, and then some renovation stuff as well that you've been doing a lot of recently, right? You want to touch on that?
Yeah, no problem. That's actually something that's very near and dear to my heart. That's part of the reason why I came to this company in general, was for the full suite of renovation style lending. So what I found is that there's a lot of people out there that want to buy a house and then they want to flip the house. And I was one of those people. Back in 2006, the worst time to buy a house, but I did it anyway because I didn't know. I bought my house and I thought, okay, well, now I'm going to fix it up. I'm going to do some work to it. Maybe I can take out a home equity, do more work to it, or pay off whatever I built up to be able to, build that property up. And of course, then we get hit with the recession, and the value of my house drops $50,000 from 6 months earlier. So it's kind of like watching your entire child's college fund float out the window, in the matter of a few months. And that was really scary to think that, I could have invested so much more of my own money and lost even more in that case. Mm-hmm. So I started thinking about that, and then I started looking around my house and thinking about the 7 projects that I've started that I haven't quite finished yet, because who's got time to do all this stuff on their own when you're paying for a little bit here, a little bit there, and trying to do little things at a time. It just makes it really difficult to really get too far with it. So when it comes to renovation lending, it's a loan product that not only allows you to buy a house, but it allows you to add a budget to that house for renovations. And that's not just renovations because it needs a new roof or the windows are crap and you need to replace them all. What if you walk through a house and the whole house is beautiful except for the bathroom that's straight out of the 70s? Most realtors are going to say, okay, well, yeah, you'll have to do something about that bathroom. Let's move on. Whereas I when I talk to my real estate partners, I say, hey, look, stop at that bathroom. Say, hey, look, I've got a guy that'll finance this property for you, and you can make it exactly what you want. Tell me what you want to see in this bathroom. It's a far more fun conversation to talk about somebody's dreams and aspirations about what they were going to do, what they want to do, rather than saying, or just hearing about how badly the room looks and how much it sucks right here, right now. So the renovation lending is key to allow people to buy a location. So rather than, thinking, well, I've got to find a house that fits my budget. Well, you also wanted to have all of these specific things. Well, I try to explain to people there's no such thing as a used house factory. What's out there is what's out there.
That's interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, you have to find usually the location, maybe the school district, the proximity to a hospital if you have major concerns with illnesses in your home. So there's a lot of different factors that go into that. You could find a crappy old house in a nice neighborhood that you could buy for cheap and make it something better, and then have what you want, but have been able to get in at a much lower price point than everybody else in that area, then you've struck gold. And a lot of people don't realize that that's even possible. I had a project that one of our renovation managers had done where they literally had a house. I mean, I would have been scared to walk in this house, not only because it just looked creepy, but it looked like it might just fall over at any minute. So instead of thinking, hey, how can we renovate this house, we utilize the 203K, which allows for you to take this house, knock it down to the foundation, and just build a new house on top of that foundation. As long as he didn't change that foundation, he could literally just wipe the slate clean and put it right back into place. So, I mean,
Wait, and that's a
was,
203K rehab?
yes.
Wow, I didn't know it was to that extent. That's crazy.
Yeah, so FHA doesn't have a limit on the percentage of how much is renovation and how much is the purchase price. So let's say you find a piece of land that's got a crappy house on it that's fallen over, and they're saying, yeah, well, we'll sell you this piece of land with this house on it for $20,000. And you say, okay, well, I can do up to $220, so that gives me a $200,000 budget to do the renovations on the home. Well, you're talking to a builder, and builder says, yes, man, I can put a nice 3-bedroom ranch or 2-story or whatever it is that you want for $200,000 or less. Well, then now all of a sudden you've got a great scenario. The 203K will even cover the cost of removal of the previous property. Like I said, all you have to do is make sure that you keep the original foundation, or at least the layout of that foundation. And yes, the sky's the limit. Okay.
Yeah, wow, that really opens up a lot of doors for you. No pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. There's the conventional, not so much the same, 50%. So you buy it for 100, most you can do is 100. So it's a little bit of a different option there. And then of course you've got VA, which we haven't talked about. That's a veterans loan.
Yeah.
The VA loan, which is, I don't know what most people know about the VA loan, but the VA loan is another great option, only for our veterans, veterans and spouses that had veterans that had died in action or action-related reasons are also eligible. But what this program is awesome for is it combines the ability of being able to do 100% financing, but also combines the ability to do renovation financing and fix up a house. I mean, a lot of our vets are suffering from not just mental type conditions like PTSD, but also a lot of physical stuff. People in wheelchairs, people that are missing limbs. I mean, people that, they need to be able to get around. And to give them an option to where they can, put in a wheelchair accessible ramp, or widening the door frames, or lowering countertops so that way they can reach the things in their home. I mean, that used to all just be, well, got to go renovation if you want to do that stuff. So, Loan Depot, kind of just put their foot down and said, well, let's stop doing that. Let's give them more options. So we went to the VA and we pioneered the VA renovation program. They let us run it for a year. They put some limits on it, like, maximum loan amounts and no structural stuff. But then after a year, they started looking at it and started thinking, wow, this program is working out great. It's got a very low attrition, so these people are paying for their homes, usually because they've got all fixed incomes, so there's no, I lost my job or anything like that. So, it's a much more stable product. So they're like, hey, you know what? Let's open it up. Now sky's the limit. If you can get the construction done within 6 months, they don't care what you do. And it could be structural, it could be $200,000 worth of work, it doesn't matter. As long as it fits in the value of the surrounding area, then it's perfectly okay to do. And yeah. I thought that was a huge, because I'm very big into, the vets. My dad was a vet, my stepdad was a vet, my brother was in the National Guard as well. My son's going to be going off to the military later in the fall this year. So, I take it, to heart that these are people that deserve our help just as much as a community we deserve theirs. So that product, again, is very near and dear to my heart, and it falls right in with all the rest of the renovation stuff. I mean, we've got the product. We just got to find out which one works best for each customer.
Absolutely. And yeah, I've got nothing but respect and appreciation for these vets. I mean, they put themselves on the line, and a lot of them made the ultimate sacrifice. And the ones that came back, they deserve products like this, So really happy that Loan Depot is able to do all that stuff, and I wish more companies would. So that's really neat that you guys are able to do that. Well, we're kind of wrapping up here. I know you had some reviews that you'd like to share with us, right? You have that set up? Oh. Let's go ahead and pop that up on the screen. We'll go through a couple of them, and then I gotta cut you off. All right? I got work to do. I got clients that I gotta help out.
Sure. Yes, we're all busy. I totally get that. Let me know when the screen share comes up.
Yeah, we're good. Go ahead.
All right, so just to kind of give you an idea, part of what I did in the past was I worked very heavily in the lending tree market, mostly on refinances and stuff like that, and I built up quite a bit of reviews. In fact, my 48 reviews, all at 5-star, is unique in a lot of ways, not only because the 5-star aspect of it, but also the fact that I've got so many of them. If you look at most of the other loan officers throughout our company, they don't have this big of a following on LendingTree. There might be a Facebook or LinkedIn, other places like that. Coming new into the retail world 2 years ago, I kind of had to start over. So, I appreciate the fact that I've got this here, but I'm rebuilding. Some of the best comments that I remember getting were some of the ones that I'm showing right now. My favorite one was my buddy here. He tried twice to go through Quicken, and don't get me wrong, Quicken is a big company. They do a lot of loans. They're obviously successful, so there's not much to be said about that fact. But the fact is that the loan officers that he worked with didn't understand his financial situation, and they didn't know how to instruct him to get to a position to where he could do stuff. And after only just a few days of working with him, we came up with a plan that put him into a loan, and 2 weeks later, he's funded. Wow. And he's looking at, hey, what a great situation. You go to the bank, same bank twice, only to be denied, and then under the exact same circumstance, being able to be approved at another bank is pretty unique. Most banks, when they say you're denied, there's probably a good reason for it, and it just depends on if the next bank has a solution. In this situation, I didn't really have some crazy solution. I just listened and understood what he needed. The other one is, my friend up in California, Tanza was extremely busy as a person. And what I found is in this industry, you can't be a 9-to-5er. You need to be able to be available for people when they need you. You need to be honest and straightforward. Like she says in here, taking time away from my family to be able to help out, making sure that everything was smooth, no hidden figures, no extra expenses. If anything, my numbers always go down from the time from where I get started to where I end. These are just things that I do knowing that it's going to produce a situation in which I'm going to get good positive reviews back. And that's why I give anybody this task. Google Matt Matheny mortgages, Loan Depot, whatever. You will not find any negative reviews about me anywhere online. The first person that does, I'll give them $200 off their loan, because I can.
Careful, you might be giving people incentive to give you a bad review so they can just reference their own review.
They gotta use me before they can get a bad review in. But I'm very proud of what I've been able to accomplish when it comes to my online or my digital profile. I mean, the fact is that's what sells people today. When somebody says, "Hey, check out this restaurant that I went to last week," what do? They go on to Yelp, or they just get onto Google and they look it up and they look at the reviews and they read, well, it looks like everybody had a great time, but their fish sucks. Well, I like fish, so maybe I won't go there. And they make decisions based off of this all the time. I've had people that have utilized my services, even though there were other lenders that were slightly better priced than I was, because they trust and knew and understood that I was going to be able to do what I said I can do, and that they didn't have to worry about whether or not it was all smoke and mirrors with the other company.
Yeah. So hey, why don't you scroll so people can see some more real quick?
I don't know. There's something wrong with the website. It won't let me show them all. Or won't let me scroll, so I'll go ahead.
Well, that's fine. But just bring your. Oh, there we go.
I changed it to where you can see a few. The one thing that I always noted about reviews is that I've always found that the really long reviews are usually the complaints, and then the really short reviews are the kudos and congrats. Most people are just like, "Hey, great job, way to go. Here's your 5-star rating." Yeah. And then if you messed up, it was, "Hey, I'm going to pretty much drill you into a hole so far you're going to need a rope to climb out of." What I found is that, and what I think is really cool, is that a lot of my reviews are all not only 5-star, but they're long. I mean, these are people that have literally opened up and had long, thoughts about what it was like to work with me and the company that I was working with at whatever point in time the reviews were done. So I take that to heart, man. If somebody's going to leave me a 2-paragraph review, I mean, I love it. And I used to have a folder where I keep the best reviews, and I'd have this folder on my desktop. And anytime I was having a hard day, I would just open up this folder and I would read through some of these reviews that people put out there, and it gave me the confidence and the strength to just jump back out there and just keep pushing. Because I know that if that many people felt like I did a great job, there's bound to be other people out there that will trust that and give me an opportunity as well.
Yep. Hey, why don't you kill the screen share so I can see you again?
Sure, not a problem at all. Let me figure out this technology that we're using here.
All right, so
you should be good.
Wait a second. So you're telling me that there's people on the internet that complain about things?
Oh my gosh, there are.
That blows my mind, right? All right, well, that's it. Just time for some final remarks. Any last things you'd like to share?
Honestly, if there's anything to share, it's just give me a call if you need something. I can be reached pretty easily. Like I said, I'm not a 9-to-5-er. You can reach me on my direct cell. That's 847-707-4719. I'll say it again, 847-707-4719. I do have a website, so if you just go to the www.loandepot.com, all you have to do is just put a /M Matheny for Matt Matheny, and that will take you directly to my website. There's a whole boatload of information about our product and services there, plus there are links to my application, and like I said, there's always easy text, chat, email, whatever you got. I'm a firm communicator in all of those areas.
Yeah, very good. I'm sure that we can manage to put that link in the description on the bottom too. So everybody, if you want to get in touch with Matt, I'd be happy to put that link on the bottom so you can just click it and then get over to him. All right. Well, hey, I really appreciate you coming on. I know that you're a busy guy and you got a lot going on, so I really, really appreciate you coming out and enlightening the audience that we have here today. And everybody, I appreciate you as well. I appreciate you spending the time. I know that these are a little bit longer than your average 3 to 10 minute YouTube videos. So if you like this kind of long format, you like this kind of, what do you want to call it, critical thinking or well-developed point type of interview style, I really appreciate it if you hit that like button, the thumbs up, comment, subscribe, share, really get the word out. Really, we're doing our best to try and grow this channel and make it really big. And also, if we have anybody who's interested in being a guest, I'd appreciate if you reach out to me. I'd be very happy to talk to you about it as well. So, all right, well, thank you, Matt. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you letting me on here, Frank. It's something that I look forward to doing more with, and I'll let you know as things grow on my end as well.
That's great. All right, thanks again. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. We'll see ya.
This is Frank, a professional real estate broker and business broker. Frank helps people buy and sell all types of commercial property. He helps business owners find space to lease and helps landlords fill their commercial vacancies. Frank helps business owners evaluate, market, and sell their businesses with or without real estate involved. He also helps people buy and sell homes. To learn more about Frank and his services, go to frankpetersonbroker.com. And he'll be Frank with you.